I call them up and say, hey, I'd like to write for you.
Bitcoin.
To me, it looks like an ongoing bubble.
Добрый день, дорогие друзья, с вами Александр Герчик и Джек Швагер. И сегодня у нас очень интересная передача в нашей рубрике «Посидим По-Большому». И мы реально будем беседовать с выдающимся человеком. Постараемся задать ему побольше вопросов. Как вы видите, огромное количество книг. Поэтому, дорогие друзья, смотрите внимательно и получайте удовольствие.
Не побоюсь этого слова, легенда мировых финансовых рынков, один из лучших, величайших трейдеров мира, Джек Швагер.
Jack has just published his fourth book, The Hedge Fund Market Wizard.
So, to make this talk relevant, I can assure you that all the points I'm going to talk about, really all the points. Hello.
Thank you, first of all, thank you very much. It's very kind.
Well, you came all the way out here, so no big deal.
You're the person who deserves. So, the questions are going to be simple, but something would you like, and first question is usually because a lot of people, they start asking us the questions. I mean, I'm just a regular guy, I'm no one, have no education, how would I begin an industry? So my question is to you, about your childhood.
My childhood?
Education.
Nothing very, just I grew up, you know the era I grew up. I grew up in Brooklyn.
By the way, guys.
Yeah, so nothing, very uninteresting childhood. Education was in economics. I did go to Brooklyn College, which was an excellent university, and I also went afterwards, I went to graduate school in Brown. And I always tell people, listen, I'm not joking. I said I got a better education in Brooklyn College than I had in Brown.
Seriously?
Seriously, yeah. It was
what was the major?
Economics, a minor in math. But at least when I went to it, I think it's still probably a good school, but back in those days it was a fairly competitive school, and it was excellent, So and I went to college, it was I had no, there was a small expense, but I had a New York State scholarship, so college cost me nothing.
So 4 years passed from the college, you're getting out, what's the next step?
Well, then I went to graduate school. I went to Brown. And
MBA?
I didn't go, no, I wasn't an MBA, I was in an economics program. I was originally going to go for a PhD, but I stopped at the master's level. So that was part of we had our class, you know how the colleges work, they work off an algorithm, they expect a certain number of people to accept. And if too many people accept, or too few, it's not good. So our incoming class was significantly larger than a typical economics. So there were rumors I had a scholarship to go to Brown. So there were rumors that the money was not going to be there for that. And I wasn't stellar, and I didn't, actually, I was a little disappointed in Brown in a way, we had to do more with the professors you get, really. I had a professor who taught his thesis. I was hoping to go to Brown and really get a great grounding in economics. And my main course of macroeconomics was for a professor who was brilliant but taught his thesis, which you couldn't get more microscopic than that. But anyway, I did okay, but I wasn't stellar. And so I could have gone on, but I didn't have the scholarship beyond the MA. So I didn't want to pay, and I also thought I'd go out, get a job, and then go back and get a PhD. Then I fell into this business, and it never made sense ever to go back for a PhD anymore.
What was the first job?
The first job was a research analyst. A position that doesn't exist anymore. I don't believe. I think
they do.
I was a commodity research analyst. I don't know fundamentals on the fundamental side. So I don't know if that position even exists.
The weather report and everything else.
Well, not so much a weather report, but supply demand, economics.
COT report.
What's that?
COT reports.
Yeah. I mean, basically, the government reports, but also projections. But the bottom line is you're still trying to project prices. So essentially, a fundamental fundamental analyst projecting commodity prices and working for a brokerage firm. And I don't believe brokerage firms have that. I don't believe that position exists anymore. Maybe it does, but it's certainly pretty rare, I think, if it exists at this point.
So the first job, you basically fell in love.
Well, I liked I mean, it was, what I liked about it was that there was I wanted something that was analytical, and I wanted something that was non-repetitive. I didn't want to do the same thing every day. And so the markets are always changing, so it's not repetitive, and you had to be original. And also, when I got into the business, at least, the research I thought was pretty awful. So you didn't have to. I would kind of think of myself as a medium-sized fish in a pond with a lot of small fish. It wasn't that I was so great, but everything, all the other research was pretty pathetic. So I saw an area I thought I could get ahead, and it was interesting, and it was analytical, and I never left, basically.
Basically, it's very interesting what you just said. It's when you was reading the other people what they wrote, you understand that you can do much better, so you start to do a better job.
That's what I thought. I mean, it sounds conceited, but it wasn't so much.
Why, it's not?
No, I thought it was conceited, but I just didn't think that the quality of the work was very good. And nor did I think there was any really good books out there. And so, I had been working at that point, probably I was in the industry for about 13 years, but I didn't think there were really any good analytical texts on futures. And so that's when I wrote that first, guide to the futures markets, complete guide. And I wrote it because I thought, hey, there's not a really good book out there, I should do one. So I took a sabbatical and I did it.
Then another question. There's a bunch of people who basically they know they could do much better than others. So the question is, there's millions of people who wants to write the book. Right?
Sure.
You wrote the book. How did you see the demand on it, and whatever? Who inspired you besides you, and whatever? Who asked you?
I never had any thoughts or any plans to be a writer. I mean, that wasn't my career objective. It sort of just happened. Well, what happened was I started writing back. Now it's called, I think, Modern Trader. Used to be called, for a long time, it was called Futures. And before Futures was called Commodities. I mean, there was the original magazine on commodities. And they started about 1971, pretty much about the same time I started in the business. And I kind of, I got the magazine and I said, I could do this. So I called them up and said, hey, I'd like to write for you. So I ended up, in the early years, I was a contributing editor for Commodities magazine. So that gave me kind of some visibility in the writing and also got me into writing. And from doing that, and also I was always writing research reports. So then it wasn't a very big step to thinking about writing a book. And it was just natural.
So they said, Jack, just write the book.
No, but I mean, that was my idea. I mean, I actually wrote the book without having a publisher. I mean, I figured, I just took a year off, I wrote it. And I forgot at which point at some point after I'd done maybe a good chunk of it, you know what happened? You're talking, this is good. Because you just saw Perry Kaufman. I told you Perry Kaufman and I go back a long time. Well, Perry Kaufman back, this is how, actually it's Perry, now that I remember, think about it.
See, now it's a beautiful, we're having a conversation.
So now, Perry Kaufman is the reason I became a book, a writer of books.
After we finish, we're going to call Perry and say,
it's his, not that he encouraged me, but he was definitely the catalyst. And were it not for Perry, who knows, I would have written the first book. And you want to go a step further, if I hadn't done that first book, a good chance I never would have gotten around to writing the other books either. So Perry Kaufman was doing this encyclopedia of commodities. I think something like that. I don't know if that was the handbook, I think called it Handbook of Commodity Markets. And you talk about he's doing a new 1,300-page book. That was like a 1,500-page book. But he was the editor. And for every subject, he called somebody he knew in the industry who was, expert.
For advice.
And so back in, many early days, I started out as fundamental and, as a fundamental analyst. So he said, Jack, I'm doing this thing. I'd like you to write the chapter on fundamentals. I said, okay. As I started writing. And, after a while, I'm looking, I got 80 pages and I'm nowhere near done. I just knew too much about fundamental analysis. So I called Perry up. I said, look, Perry, I'm sorry, but this is just turning out, I've kind of written like a third of my own book. And that's what I thought. I thought 80 pages would have been a third. It turned out it was more like 10%, but I didn't know that at the time. But that's what I said, look, I'll narrow the subject down. I'll give you, how about if I do a chapter on, I took some very specific subject.
Right.
It might have been something about performance analysis or whatever. And I said, I'll do a chapter on that, and you can use that, and and he was fine, and that's what happened. So here I was, I had written 80, and by that point 100 pages, and I think at that point I went to look for a publisher, and I figured I might as well write the book, so it was Perry. It was because of Perry, because I wouldn't have written the 80 pages if I hadn't agreed to do the chapter for Perry, and then that got me to write this book, and then because I had done this book, some other publisher had seen this book, and it did well. The Complete Guide did well for that type of book. I mean, we're talking about a book almost 800 pages. It's not exactly beach reading, So for that type of book, it did pretty well. And some other publisher took me out to lunch. They said, "Look, we'd like you to do this whole series of books. We want you to be the leader of the project. We want to do a book on gold, a book on interest rate. They want to do a separate book on analyzing every single market."
Right.
So I said, "Look, I spent a year of my life, and when I say a year, this is pre-computer. At least, computers existed. This is '83. But I hadn't been using them yet, and it was still very early days. It wasn't like the PCs we have now. So when it was a year. It was not just a year, but it's a year of day and night." And we're talking about doing multiple regressions by hand and stuff like that. So you didn't have all these tools. So I had no desire to, get into a whole big, immense analytical project. I said, look, I did that, and I thought that I had done the definitive book on commodity analysis, futures analysis, and I had no desire to do it again. I said, but I do have this idea, and I had the idea for years because I knew some great traders, about it would kind of be a fun idea, go around the country and interview the world, the best traders, not the world's best traders, but U.S. best traders. I wasn't thinking globally at that time. And I said it'd be a fun thing to do, but I was a research director, so means I have a whole staff, and I was working 12 hours a day as I was. So the idea of doing a book didn't really, where was I going to take the time? But so I said, that's the idea. And they loved the idea. So I said, all right. So I thought, what the hell? I thought it would be easy. I thought it wouldn't, maybe I could do it. It wouldn't be that hard. I'll do the interviews and all that. Turned out, doing the interviews is 2% of the work, really, literally. In my case, when you do the book. The actual, like we're sitting down doing this interview, that's literally, time-wise, was about 2%.
Everything else.
The 98% was taking a 200-page interview and then turning it into 20 pages that read well, and it was also about writing my own sections and putting it all in, organizing it. So it was the editing process and the writing, the stuff that had to get written. That's where all the time was. You get the actual interviews. Well, the most I took some interviews, I guess maybe a full day. Maybe some were done over several days, but not full days. But no interview would have taken more than 8 or 12 hours, really. So it wasn't the interviews that took so much time. It was the process afterward. But that's how that whole evolved. So you could say, the way fate works, Perry Kaufman could well be, could take credit for being a catalyst that resulted in the whole market was a series.
A lot of phrases I took from your book. So this is because a lot of times the people, they have read something somewhere and then they ask the questions, and most of the time this is not correct information. So right from your book you said, I started with the $2,000 and lost them all because of a single large loss.
Right.
Right from your book. So tell me more about it, because besides you being an author of a lot of books, you're a trader.
Yeah.
And that's what interested me the most, because of our audience, they basically the traders, so they want to know. So you started with $2,000, lost them all because of the large single loss. I know you added up more money there, you do your account.
Well, so this, I think it's a trade. So this goes back, so my early years, we weren't even supposed to be trading, basically, because they had this thing, but I kind of had the itch to trade, so I traded, sort of about unofficially. But it's a very small account, so it was my brother's account. My brother opened an account and I would do the trades. So at the time, I think it was the cotton market, and I'd done all this whole analysis on the cotton market. And initially I was bullish. I did the analysis, and this is actually a good lesson, not so much for trading, but from statistics and just general analysis guidelines. And people do make this mistake all the time. You can't draw conclusions when there isn't sufficient data, right? So it turns out I did the whole analysis, and this also ties back to Michael Marcus, who was the first interview I did for Market Wizards. And Michael Marcus, when I got into the business, the job that was vacated, the research analyst job, that was Michael's position. He was leaving to become a trader, and that opened up the vacancy, and I ended up ending up with that job. So we met when I was going in and he was going out, and he was in New York for a few years, and we used to get together for lunch, and every few weeks. So I remember this market very well, and so it was back in the early 70s, and I did this analysis, and first of all I understood is that I analyzed every single year since the World War II of the cotton market, and I understood that maybe with the exception of 3 or 4 years, what really determined the price in every year was the government program, because there was a glut of cotton and the government had a loan program. So basically, whatever the loan level was, it didn't make a difference whether there was too much supply, and if you have too much supply in a support level, it's going to go to the support level, and that's it. So there were only about 3 or 4 years to work with, and this particular year, it had the fundamentals were bullish, and there was only one other year that was comparable. And this was maybe even more bullish. In that year, I think cotton had gone, the highest level had gone in the 20th century, which was like low 30s. Cotton was around mid 20s. I thought, well, it's going to go up. It'll go up to that old price, but that should be about it. So I was originally bullish. I made some money. But then when I got into the old price and higher, and the markets, they all started looking like it was topping, whatever. I thought, I was trying to pick a top, so I got short. And so by the way, Marcus, who hadn't done any fundamental work, didn't do anything, but he was just a great intuitive trader, just had tremendous instincts. And he was very, very bullish on cotton. And I remember arguing from the third argument, and his thing was, well, the PRC, China, China was then called the PRC, People's Republic of China. He said China's coming into as an importer in a significant way the first time ever, and he understood that that was out of the 100 fundamentals, that was the only one that made a difference. Now I knew about China as a buyer, but I said, I got that in my statistics, but I didn't understand that because it was new and because there was an unknown amount that they could buy, that would be the driving force. And he understood that, so he was bullish all along. Cotton, by the way, that year went to 99 cents. So the smartest thing. The luckiest thing and the smartest thing is that I only had 2,000. So I lost my winnings and I lost the 2,000, and it's a good thing that I didn't have more money, and that and it's also a good thing that I only started a very small amount. So that was the trade. That was like kind of the. That's certainly a lesson that you only need to be wrong if you don't have risk management. You only need to be wrong once. You're not out of the market. That also instilled in me, probably that experience. Instilled in me like an extreme cautiousness, which stayed to me even to this day. So whenever I start, and I don't trade all the time. I trade. I go in spurts. I trade. I don't trade. And the determination of that is, well, I always do the same thing. When I go back to trading, I always start with a small amount, and I have an amount that I'm willing to lose. And if I lose that, I'm out. And if I keep on winning, I keep on trading until I start giving back substantial amounts. Which is always still when I'm well ahead, but I've given back. And once that happens, I quit. And then I wait till I get a real urge to start trading again. And a lot of it can be a while, because a lot of times I could get a lot of stuff. It takes time. I don't feel like trading. I got too many other things to do. I'm too busy, and so I don't. But that's been my process actually from that very first time. And it's advice I actually give to trade, especially new traders. At first, I said always start small. Because odds are, like myself and like even a lot of the traders I interviewed, you're going to probably lose in the beginning. So if you're going to lose, you might as well get your education without so much money, you know.
Pay as less as possible.
Yeah, right. So I always advise people to start small. And the other advice I have is when you do get ahead, have some sort of level where you'll pull the plug, because too many people do, they'll make money, they'll get maybe they'll do it right, maybe they'll be lucky, whatever, but they end up giving it all back and then losing, So if you have a spot where you'll get out, and the idea of getting out is because, look, if you're starting to lose significant money, something's wrong. You're out of sync with the markets. Something's wrong. You got reasons. Actually, it's another tangent I'll get to in a second. But you got reasons for losing that maybe psychological, whatever. And you keep on trading, you're just going to throw it all away. You're going to throw it all away. So if you have a spot, say, if I lose this much, I'm out, and that's it. And then you can always get back in if you feel, but you'll come in with a clean slate and with a clean mind and with no positions to color your objectivity. And it's not like you're saying I'll never trade again, but you're just saying, okay, I'm still ahead. Let me take what I have. I'll start trading again, but something's wrong now. Now's not, And I always think for me it was always good advice. I think it's good advice in general, but anyway, that's the now the interesting thing when I did the second Market Wizard book, and I put this in if you go back, a lot of people maybe don't remember the particular way. I always write these introductory sections, the beginning sections, and I had a chapter in that early book, in that second book, where I met Ed Sakota again, and we were both at a conference, and we met that evening. We walked around, we went to dinner, we were talking a lot. Now I was again in that type of situation. I had done the same thing. I had made money, and I was starting to give it back again, And the thing is, at the time, I had like a lot of expenses. I was building a house. I was also very busy with, being a research director, and I had a lot of things going on. I didn't really want, on some level, I didn't really want to be trading, and sort of, when I was talking to Sakota, I explained to him, I told him this whole trade, I had said this would happen and what went wrong with this trade, and I was kind of relating it, and through that conversation, it sort of came out with this whole philosophy, which came out in the first interview too, which is like everybody gets what they want. And it sort of dawned upon me, really, that at that point in time, I had just too much going on, I had too many expenses. I was making money, so I felt I couldn't stop trading, and I did something really, really stupid, which I normally wouldn't do, and sort of realized, well, I didn't want to be trading, and I was getting what I wanted,
Right.
I got an excuse to stop trading. And people, I remember my own disbelief when Sakota said, everybody gets what they want out of trading. I said, come on, Ed, people lose, they want to lose. And he said, everybody gets what they want out of trading.
Yeah,
So,
but that's what it is, yeah.
So so there are times, it's not so much you want to lose, but there's something else that's driving you. And so in that particular instance, in my own case, I was trading, but I had too much, I really didn't want to be trading, and I made a perfect excuse for me to stop trading. I started losing money by doing something stupid that I normally wouldn't do. So yeah, we're all subject to the same psychological drawbacks. You have to just be aware of it, to minimize.
And very interesting thing, when you start the Market Wizard, how those people was chosen? Some of them you knew, some of them were referred to you.
Yeah. Well, that's how it worked. Yeah, I knew Marcus. I knew Bruce Governor.
By the way, you see, the beautiful part is about the conversation, how we understand each other. The Marcus is the next.
Oh, okay,
right
yeah. Well,
the page.
Well, I'll tell you, when I did my books, I would have a stack of index cards, and
I love it.
And if I did the interview, and I wouldn't use it. I just had it. It was a crutch. And when I finished the interview, whatever you were winding up, I said, do you mind? Let me just flip through these cards, see if I missed anything. And almost invariably, I had nothing left. I basically hit everything. So if you have a regular conversation, odds are you'll basically hit everything you want to hit anyway. And it's much more natural that way than if you go and you have questions. And I've had sometimes if somebody's a really bad interviewer. The worst interviewers in the world are are the ones that have, first of all, they have a list of questions, and they're going to ask the questions in the order they have them, and they ask the question in the same way no matter what the other person said.
Right.
So the best stuff I ever got on my interviews were never from the question so much. It's one thing leads to another, and tangent goes to tangent, and then you get the heart of the matter. But if you're just going to come in with a prepared question, you'll get pat answers, and you'll have nothing.
Interview.
And you'll have nothing, yeah.
So you start talking about Marcus.
Oh yes, I knew Marcus. I knew Bruce. Marcus had hired Bruce Governor when they were at Commodities Corp. I knew Bruce Governor. So I mean, just an example of two like key people that I knew. I think chapter 1 and chapter 2 may be in the book, even in the first book. You know, I also had, I forget who recommend, you know, what recommendations I got from different people. Every time I interviewed somebody, I would ask, who should I interview? Some people I knew just because of reputation, like somebody like Jim Rogers. Man, I knew he'd...
Special case.
Yeah, I knew he had come out of Soros. He had broken up with Soros, and he was his own investor. And so I knew him. I mean, I knew of him. I sent him my complete guide, and I said, hey, I knew he was teaching in Columbia at the time. I said, look, I'm not a journalist. I'm an analyst. I'm doing a book, and so he agreed. And I forgot, like people like Schwartz. I forgot how I don't know if somebody recommended Schwartz. It might have been that somebody else recommended Schwartz because I don't think he was known at all. Of course, people like Governor, Marcus, well, maybe Governor by that time I interviewed him. And I still don't think they were both in Commodities Corp. People, unless you were kind of in that, you know, Commodities Corp was a prop trading firm. Unless you were part of that, you really wouldn't.
Of course.
You know, so these, you know, Governor, of course, became famous through Caxton, but somebody like Marcus never, you know, went that route and was always a private individual. So somebody, I knew these people who just were invisible to the world, and they gave me some recommendations, and some people I just found like, you know, but that was a process.
So let's talk about Michael Marcus more. I mean, I want for the people to let them know Michael Marcus, the person who originally lost his mother money early in his trading career, later went out to turn $30,000 into $80 million in 12 years.
Yeah. Well, not in 4. I think it may have been over 10 or 12 years.
12 years.
12 years, yeah.
Yes,
yeah, 12 years. Right.
That's everything I do from
right. Yeah, if it's 12 years in the book, it's
so,
exactly.
I mean, it's
12 years, yeah.
It's very interesting for us.
Yeah, and
the reason we want people to know, honestly.
Yeah.
Everything is possible.
Now, it's a little misleading, the 30,000 to 80 million, because it's really that they were taking out 20% a year. So it's actually much more.
Uh-huh.
Because he was working for Commodities Corp, and they were taking, you know, they were taking 20% out of his. So actually, he really, it's not only the growth from 30 to 80. Although at one point early year they did put in 100 in, but they took out so many tens of millions that so his actually growth was greater than just from 30 to 80 million. Unbelievably, yeah. So there were years there. He had straight years where he was making high triple-digit returns. I mean, just extraordinary. Part of that, of course.
We're talking about in 80s.
In the 70s. 70s, yeah.
So let's talk about Marcus more.
Yeah.
Because you referred to him many times. You know, I understand you have something like click together.
Well, no, but we knew each other. We were friends, and kind of. There's the irony that connects us is that his leaving to become a trader opened up a position which got me into this business. Had I not, I wasn't looking to go into future what we then call commodities. I wasn't even looking to go into Wall Street in any shape or form, and I knew zero about futures at the time. I just had some analytical skills. That's it. So I ended up in that job only because of fate, that he left it at the exact time I was looking for a position, and his boss happened to look in a newspaper where I put an ad looking for a position, called me in for an interview, and that led to the job. So for one thing, I'm in the business because he left to become a trader, so that's that connection.
Right.
But then we continued on for a few years, and we had that connection, and of course he became the first chapter of the Market Wizards book. So it's that there were a number of those things that why maybe he would stand out more than other people for those reasons. Besides the fact, of course, that just an extraordinary type, extraordinary accomplishment. Also, even though he was extremely reluctant to do the interview, he was what I consider probably one of the best interviews across all the books that I ever had. And there was a reason why. You can always tell which not always, because sometimes the length dictates it not be, but what I put as the first chapter is always a chapter I like a lot. Because I think it's very important people start reading a book. So whatever chapter I put first is, if it's not my favorite chapter in a book, it's very, and in Marcus's case, that was my favorite interview. Might have been my favorite interview ever, I don't know. But what I liked so much about it was he was honest, he was very honest. Even though he was extremely reluctant to do it, but once he started talking, he was very honest and very open. I don't think you can find a more just complete open person, testament of the experience of a trader that Marcus gave me in that interview. He didn't color anything. He didn't make himself look good in any way. He put it all out there, all the hardships and all the giant mistakes that were made early on, they're all there. So I like that aspect, and sort of made for a very colorful interview. So that's another reason why I particularly like that. Yeah.
So let's say he did lose his mom's money.
He lost his own money plus his mom's money. Yeah. His money and his. Not only that, he came from a lower middle class background. So, his mom, he may have had $50,000 in the world, at the time, and he lost 30 of it, plus his own money, So it was a big thing, It's not like, so yeah, he went. That was just one of many. One of quite a number of experiences where he had like terrible failure in the beginning, but despite that, he still became one of the world's.
Then the next question is, obviously, I'm sure you asked the same questions either for the book, either not for the book. It's usually when the person is losing money, and he had like very hot heat because when we losing the parents' money. This is much harder than to lose your own money. So when he lost it, and you talked to him, how did he manage to go back?
Because the thing that Marcus had, one of the reasons for success, he just had this inner feeling that he could do it. He
truly believed in himself.
Despite all the failures, despite everything, he understood what he did wrong, but he just believed, and he used the analogy, and I still remember it to this day. He said, and I didn't mean it literally necessarily, but he said, like, there's a scene in Fiddler on the Roof where the lead is sitting, is on the roof, and he's like talking to God, and he said he sort of like visioned himself like that, like talking to God, am I really that stupid? And he just got back the resounding answer, He just had that. Despite all the evidence to the contrary. Now, I got to be careful here, because it might well be that 99 people out of 100 with that type of thing don't have the skill, and will never make it. And maybe the best thing is for them not to try again. But in Marcus's case, he just had this really just powerful belief that he could succeed, and he didn't let failure stop him. How
long it took him basically to get out from the hole? And did he pay his mom back?
Oh, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he never became very wealthy. I'm sure, I don't know how long his mom lived after that and all that, but it wasn't that. This was, wasn't that many years after that he was making millions a year. So, but once he got it, he got it. But he also had this phenomenal. There are different types of traders. Okay. People succeed as traders. They don't always succeed for the same reason. Like you could have.
You see it? You don't understand. Look at this. That's the next question.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. They succeed for different reasons. Like you have different types of artists who may become great artists now. They succeed for different. They become great artists for different reasons. Great writers They could be great writers, but they could be great writers in completely different ways. It's not because they're similar in their approach, but they're both great in their own way. Like, I don't know, like something like Dostoevsky and George Orwell. I'll take two names off the top of my head.
Right.
There's nothing really in common necessarily about the style of the writing or what they wrote about or anything else, but they're both great writers. So it's not that they had necessarily the same types of insights or skills or passions or whatever, but each had their own specific type of talent. So traders have the same thing. It's like some traders are like somebody like an Ed Thorpe. Ed Thorpe is an absolute genius, off the charts. God knows what his IQ is. I have no idea, but I'll tell you it's probably 5 standard deviations out. So he's an absolute genius, okay? So he continually figured out ways that Wall Street, inefficiencies in the market, and he continually found ways to exploit them. So he was the first one to figure out convertible arb, the first one to figure out stat arb. When regular stat arb became popular, he figured out changes to make it work. He just continually kept inventing processes, and all quant, and a lot of it heavy math. Develops the Black-Scholes model. Mathematics wasn't called the Black-Scholes because he developed it, but he developed his own and really mathematically equivalent method of pricing options years before they published it as a paper. So this is a true out genius, pure quant power. That's an example. Somebody with very special skill and applying it to the markets. Purely quant though. Something like Marcus is on a complete opposite end. Even me, doing like economic analysis, was a high quant guy, to Marcus, So Marcus never did any of that. But what he had was just a great feel, great sense of and like the line I use about Marcus, he could look at 100 things in the market and just instinctively know which is the one that's important. And it's sort of like the one story that was in the interview. He's sitting there watching TV, watching CNN or whatever the news channel was. This is back in the Russian invaded Afghanistan, but he's watching at 2 a.m. at night or something like that. He sees, this news flash comes out, Russia's invading Afghanistan. He calls Hong Kong floor and starts buying gold like crazy. Instantaneously.
Intuition.
He just understood. He just had that instinct. And he would joke, he said to this day he's afraid to go to Hong Kong because so many traders, before they turn around 10 minutes later, they figured out what had happened.
Right.
And so many of the floor traders, lost vast amounts because he was buying, So, but that's a different, so that's kind of two extremes. I took you, really, those are a perfect example of opposite extremes. One's completely instinctive, intuitive, and the other one is completely quant.
For now, the most important thing for me right now, two answers. The answer number one, your personal opinion about the intuition, and second answer, I want to know the opinion of those people that you interview about the intuition, because discretionary trading is a little different. Like, for example, a lot of people that asking the question, look at this guy. I said, look at this guy. It's like you said, boom, is getting right away. Somehow there's a people who use the intuition because they feel like it. Me, like a trader, everybody tells me that I have a fantastic intuition, but sometimes I'm afraid to use, because intuition and common sense, it's two separate ways. So I want to hear two answers from you. The first answer is your personal opinion about the intuition, and another one is the answer of all those people that you interview about the intuition.
Yeah, I think it's probably might be the same, but I'll put it in my own words because I don't necessarily remember.
I need your words.
Yeah. I don't necessarily remember exactly the answers that other people gave me, but I think it would be consistent. But the way I would phrase it is, intuition is something that's very misunderstood. People think, intuition is something
I think the gold is going to go up. It's not intuition.
Yeah. It's a sort of this amorphous thing. It comes into your mind. It's like people who are superstitious and they get a bet. They buy a lottery ticket and they bet their kids, birthdays, and they think, whatever, and then they win, and oh my God, so that's not intuition. Intuition is not like that. It's not something that is what is intuition? And I'm very simple. So, and I'm logically, scientifically oriented. I don't believe in any of the other stuff. It's very simple. You, if you're a trader, particularly a trader like Marcus, who's watching the markets, God knows, 15 hours a day for 20 years, whatever number of years it was at the time. But you see like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of situations, right? It's not like it's not like your big blue, whatever, the IBM computer, and that you can kind of get these, look up the thing and find a path. But in your mind, you think something, all of a sudden you think something's going up, and you're not sure even why. But what's really happening in all likelihood is you've seen that situation before, probably multiple times. And particularly if it's counterintuitive, particularly if it's illogical, it made more of an impression because, like, let's say a really bearish news item comes out and you think the market's going to crash and the market goes up.
Same like happened with the last time this we've seen with Trump. That's
the classic. I
said right away.
And I can't believe, when I look back, maybe I was so upset that Trump, and I don't mind saying it,
It's okay.
No, I don't mind saying but maybe I was so upset that Trump won that I wasn't able to think clearly. But that, when I look back, I said, how could I have missed that? How could I have missed that? Everybody thought that Trump is and the market before that, every time Trump was looked like he was doing better, the market went down.
Did, absolutely.
And as soon as he won, it started tanking. And then the markets reversed and started going up.
They totally put out everything. I said right away, the market is going to fly.
And that's the classic. That's the absolute classic example. So it's classic because of course you took out all the stops, number one, but the expectations were so one-sided, and the market initially goes that way for fake, and then goes the other way.
So the question is, let's say, if we can finalize, we can assume that when everybody expect what's supposed to happen, if it's not happening the way it's supposed to be, most likely this fake is going to work out.
Yeah, well, mostly, so that's true. I mean, in general terms, if the market does something, particularly for a big event, that is counter expectations, that's, it could have been, what if it could have been the market went down and didn't come back, and that would be of no information whatsoever. But the fact that it came back, that's
totally. It's one day. I remember the same day, on November 8th, it has a huge dip.
Right.
And when he's winning, because everybody say one thing, he's going to win the Florida. Most likely, he's going to win an election.
Right.
I remember that big dip, and right away,
right,
it's coming. So the next question is, who did that dip down, and who put all of it up?
Well, it's kind of stuff. Obviously smart money was bought it on the way out. Yeah. So, but we got back to the question of the intuition, whatever. Now that's sort of a very big example, but there could be smaller situations where something like the market does something unexpected, and or the action. Maybe the chart looks like the market should go down, and it starts going up, and it's some sort of pattern, And,
for example,
and you might have seen that 18 times in your trading career, and you don't remember the times you saw that particularly. Some, if you remembered, but we're talking about intuition here. So I'm just making up an example. So maybe you saw something similar, but you don't realize you saw something. But on some subconscious level, it triggers. Of course, when it happened, you were surprised, and it kind of somewhere registered in your memory. Now, it may not be at your conscious level, but it's at your subconscious level. So the way I look at intuition is real intuition, true intuition, is merely subconscious experience.
Did it happen to you in any case?
Well, that's it.
Like,
sure.
For example, like when you see it and say, that's it, I'm buying because
it relates to that type of intuition. The one I remember best because I put it in the book, it's an old example, but it also ties in with this whole question of, dreams about trading. does that have any, and of course, again, dreams, it may be absolutely nothing at all, but it could be. So the one I put in the book, which was my own experience, was at the time I was bullish Canadian dollar, and I had some position long, but not much of a position. And I thought it was going up, and I kept on waiting for a pullback, and there was no pullback coming. And I remember very clearly, I had a dream that the Canadian dollar is just going, much higher. And that morning when I woke up, I realized that I was
subconsciously.
Yeah. So let's say this is a good example for how our human emotions sabotage us, right? So what's going on here? The fact is, I should have bought more all the way along. I had made mistakes all along by not buying more. And the longer I wait, the worse the mistake got. So it became important for me to justify my decisions if I couldn't buy more, because that would say I could have bought it like every day before
and you felt bad,
for weeks. I'd be making it even worse. Why today? Why not last week or the week before the week before? So I'm invested in not buying, not adding, because it's sort of locking in this terrible mistake I made, even though I was right on the market. And so I'm waiting, because at least if it gets a drawdown, I'll feel a little bit better. At least I didn't buy the high, whatever.
And it didn't.
So I could, but of course it never was coming. But when I woke up that morning, I realized that was my subconscious breaking through. I was so convinced it was going higher. There's that subconscious coming through, it's just saying it's just not going. And I did. I doubled or tripled my position that day. So I still remember that, and that's kind of an intuition. It's kind of on a level I knew it was going higher, but I couldn't let myself admit it for the reasons I just explained.
Out of all of those people that you interview, and besides that, for the first book, secondly, what they have in common, and what was special about them, at least, like if you can point a few guys. I mean, we talk about Marcus, maybe Schwartz or somebody. So what they have in common, because 100% I'm sure those people have something in common.
Well, they had tons of things in common, but you can have people have those things and not be great traders. But I mean, some of the things were kind of obvious. They're all disciplined people. They all had risk management, very good risk management. And doesn't mean they always had risk. Like Marcus, like I say, made 1 million risk management mistakes early on, but when he became successful, that was important. So they had a lot of elements, patience in many cases. Oh, one thing that probably every great trader has, I think, it'd be very difficult for somebody to be a really good trader if they didn't have this trait, is the ability to really be flexible to change your mind. You got to be able to say, in an instant, I'm wrong.
That's the next question.
Okay.
I want you to read it.
Yeah, right. A trait that is essential great trader, the ability to be flexible. Exactly. So that is really, really critical. So if you're the type of person whose opinion is like can't be changed, if you're just rigorous, odds are you'll be a terrible trader. You just have to be able to. Good traders are just, they've got no loyalty. They're just willing to change.
Fantastic phrase. I wanted to read it to the people, and I want you to go deep in it, because that's exactly what I always say. By the way, Richard Dennis in a Turtle Way book said one thing. When they ask him a question, and then it's going to be the next question. When they ask him a question, who you think can be a trader? He said there's two things involved. First of all, the person has to know how to work properly. Second of all, he's got to be adequate, which is equal flexibility. So the question is, it says in your book, a trait that this is essential for great traders is the ability to be flexible.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Basically, yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's what I in fact, you asked me that as an open question, and I told you that's probably one of the most important. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of things.
If you see, you were so sure about the Canadian dollar is not going, you gotta just say, something goes wrong.
Well, yeah, so no, that was the case. I mean, basically, that's not an example. That's not a good example for that, because basically I thought it was going high. I just didn't have enough of a position. I didn't buy more. It took me a long time till I finally did. But that's not quite the same as you've got an opinion, and then like being flexible is, you think if Trump wins the election, the market's going to just crater.
And it's just not
and you start making money, and then it starts going against you. If you're not a flexible trader, you're not going to say, hey, something's wrong with my hypothesis, this shouldn't be happening, I'm out. And if you're really a great trader, you go the other way. That's what I mean by flexible.
What do you think it takes to be a good trader, besides the flexibility, besides the being disciplined, besides obviously using the risk management? What else?
I mentioned patience as another one. Basically hard work for the most part. I think almost all of these people, were hard workers in their own way.
When you said 15 hours a day, that's the answer it all.
Yeah, so you're talking about your own trading. So you don't really get, great traders. They'll spend an hour a day and, they'll become a great trader.
The miracles.
So hard work is certainly there. Let's not forget that at the bottom, at the very bottom of it, you have to have a skill, whatever the skill is. And like I said, the skills can be very different, but you have to have some skill. Why you and not somebody else, And not everybody's cut out to be a great trader. It's just like not everybody was meant to be a solo violinist with the New York Philharmonic. There are some people who have specific talents. Not everybody can run a marathon in 2 hours and 12 minutes if they're a male. Some people have
not everybody who's bold.
It's like people have different skills. So there are some people who have whatever skills are required to excel in trading, have those skills, but not everybody has them. So having that skill is part of it. You have to have a very specific methodology. You don't get great traders who just kind of like sit there and watch them. I think I'll buy this, I'll buy this. It doesn't work that way. They've developed a very specific method. So that's certainly part of it.
Дорогие друзья, вот главный приз. Технический анализ, полный курс, Джек Швагер, 12 edition. Знаете, очень интересно, прямо внизу этой книжки стоит аннотация бывшего управляющего Soros Fund Management Стэнли Дрэнк-Миллер. Джек Швагер написал на редкость хорошую книгу. Он представил материал таким образом, что и профессионал, и не специалист найдут в нем много полезного. Ее необходимо прочитать каждому трейдеру, каков бы ни был его уровень. И, видите, специально для вас подпись. Кто может получить эту книжку? Подписывайтесь на канал, нажимайте на кнопочку, нажимайте на колокольчик и смотрите это великолепное видео. Дальше. Шерите это видео с другими, и у вас будет шанс выиграть эту книгу. И третье условие – это ставьте ваши аннотации, что вы извлекли именно с этого интервью. Все те люди, которые выполнят 3 условия, предельно просты, получают эту великолепную книгу с фотографией молодого Джека Швагера. Человек море обаяния, смотрите это видео, зарядитесь колоссальной энергией. Всем всего доброго.
Out of all interviews that you've done with those great traders, was it the situation in any one of them where you say, wow, I can't believe it? Like, when the person tells you, and usually when you do the interview with anyone, obviously you do expect something, always, When you get a question, you know approximately what they're going to answer. But was there any one out of all of the people that you interview that's completely shocked you with the answer?
Probably. I don't, that's, it's a fair question, right? I know nothing springs to me like with something. Yeah, maybe the most surprising line that I would have heard, we talked about before actually, would have been Ed Sekoda's line. Everybody gets what they want on the market, implying that applies to losing traders too. So if you talk about the most unexpected comment by a trader, that I can't think of anything more extreme than that.
Let's talk about Ed.
Yeah.
What's so special about him?
Well, at first, he's a very unusual, he's eclectic, he's kind of an odd, he's a character, so he has this kind of wit, this satirical wit about him. He was actually one of the first people to kind of start using technical systems. Like, sort of now, everybody moving averages become so mundane. But back in it, he was doing it when there were mainframe computers, and he was doing it on punch cards, and nobody was doing it. So he was probably one of the very, very first people to do systematic trend following on a computer. So there may have been people who were doing it maybe by doing some sort of breakout by hand, but actually programming system, and testing systems on computers, and when Ed did it, we're talking in the 60s now. So it was he finagled his way in to get jobs at brokerage firms, so he can use their computers when off hours, and so he was kind of unusual by having done that to begin start that way. He had insights. He's very psychological oriented, sort of try to see into people's psyche and stuff like that. So he's just an unusual character.
When we had the first interview via Skype, I forgot the name of the character that you talked about. You said that I lost $10 million in a fundamental analysis.
You're a fundamentalist, and you come to a conclusion. If nothing changes that's of significance in the fundamentals, and your position goes against you, your methodology says buy more or sell more if you're short. And that means that the methodology is telling you to increase the position when you're most wrong. So that's what makes fundamental trading on fundamentals so difficult, is because it's so out of tune.
Yeah, the stock goes down
with risk management, right? So I think part of the reason why he lost was not just the fundamentals, but because that methodology didn't align itself with risk management. So the way he would put it, I asked him how do you go from being such a loser to being such a winner?
Right.
He said, he said that I became a winner when I realized it was okay to lose. In other words, meaning it's okay to take your losses and get out, and but what that implies is that he didn't understand that when he was a fundamental trader.
3 of your most recent proprietary tools, indicators: trend weight, overbought, oversold weight, OOW, and the directional weight, DW indicators.
You asked my opinion about indicators? Yeah. I'm not an indicator fan. So I personally don't. Indicators basically
lagging.
They don't look. Whatever the indicators are derivative of the price chart, right? And so there's nothing that's in the price chart that you can't see in the price chart that the indicators can tell you. So, but some people feel comfortable using indicators, and actually in this book, this The Complete Guide to the Futures Market, and I had a co-author on it. But basically, and I you can give him credit for the example, but that the chapter on indicators, which and I'm not an indicator, so he wrote that, but he came up with examples showing like how this idea, let's say the people come up with this stuff like the indicator makes a new high and the price doesn't, you get the vice versa, you get divergence, and sure you could find those examples, but you
cannot bet on it.
But you could find more examples the other way, because you see it when it happens. You see it, what you don't see is all the times where that happens and it doesn't. It's not a top, or it's not because your eye goes to the top and bottoms, and if some of those tops and bottoms, you'll have a divergence. So, the indicator is giving you this great signal. When there's divergence, it's a top and a bottom. No, what's happening is you're looking at the tops and bottoms, and some of them have divergence. What you don't realize is your eye is not seeing the 80% of the times where you had divergence and there wasn't a top or a bottom. So I personally am not an indicator fan. However, if someone is successful using indicators, God bless you. Fine, use it. Everybody has their own methodology, and should have their own methodology. And for some people, they can see more clearly with indicators than they can look at a price chart. I prefer just a plain price chart, but some people prefer indicators. And if it works, the bottom line is it working for you. If you're using indicators, I would argue if you're using indicators that's working for you, it means that those indicators are capturing something that's in the chart, and that's why it's working, right? But it doesn't make a difference. But if you see it better in the indicators, fine. And that's the approach that works for you. It's like, if you ask people, what color sunglasses do you like? Someone like yellow, someone like brown, someone like green, someone like blue. Is one color better than the other? I don't know. I don't think so. Right. It's whatever your preference is. But if you could see better with a blue blue tint and a yellow tint and get the blue tint. There's nothing wrong with it.
Now I wanna to say about the project, which is right now is a baby.
Yeah.
It's a fan-seater. I want to let people know the very important thing what the Jack is gonna talk about right now. There is a new project of Jekom Švagera, where basically people who don't have money can find themselves an investor. The project called fan-seater, and we're gonna have right under the video, the people is gonna be able to talk about it more, because a lot of people from Russia, or Ukraine, they're smart guys. They're good traders, but they cannot get their hands.
Yeah, so this is the ideal product for them, and it's also free. So, that's even better, right? So here's the concept, and it wasn't my idea. There were 3 founding partners in fan-seater. I was one. James Bibbings, who does all the compliance and operations and business, is the second. But the main founder and the one whose his idea is a fellow by the name of Emmanuel Bolari, who I knew because I was acting when I was with Fortune Asset Management as a hedge fund advisory. I worked with the firm that he was with, ADM, and actually after I left Fortune, we maintained that relationship. And so I was a consultant for the firm he was with, so that's the way we know each other. But he pitched this idea that he had, and it was fan-seater. And when he asked what I thought, and I said, it's a pretty good idea. So his idea was this: look, you have the current modern investment world where 80% or 90% of the money goes to the top,
managers, of course.
Goes to the top managers, and everybody else is left picking up the crumbs. And you could have tens of thousands of managers out there, and potentially maybe hundreds of thousands. Potentially, you could be, I don't know, out of a world of tens of millions or of traders. Even a tiny percent, even 1% of the world's traders would still be a very large number. So his idea was that the way the system works, you have to, unless you're already big or you have the proper pedigree, you've gone to the right schools, you have the right connections, you get inside of a hedge fund, and maybe you get a chance to manage. But for most people, that even if they had the skill, they have no hope. I mean, you mentioned like Ukraine, right? So you could be, let's say you're a mathematician in Ukraine, and you come up with some methodology that really works very well. Good luck finding somebody to give you money. There's no real developed financial market in the Ukraine, and you're going to find it very difficult to find investors there, and you're going to go call somebody in the US and say, look, I got this great system. Yeah, you know what? You and the 500 other people who emailed me today have a great system. It's like, there's just so many, and there's, like so many charlatans out there. So even if you're legitimate, it's if you don't have the connections and aren't already managing a lot of money, it's almost impossible to break into the business. So the idea was to create a website, a central a marketplace, right, where traders could get discovered if they really had talent, and where investors could, if I'm an investor and I'm looking for new trading talent, I don't want to invest with the same big hedge fund. I want to find somebody who's, and I'm willing to give somebody who's only trading a small amount of money. If I could see that they're really doing well, I'm willing to take. I'll like give money to 100 of these guys and see how they do, right? So there are plenty of allocators out there who are willing to try to find new talent, and so here's a way to use the power of the web to globally, not just the U.S., but globally, find undiscovered trading talent, and then that same medium can be the connection to the investors looking for that talent. So that's the basic concept. We actually have to break it up into 2 parts. For legal reasons, we had to make the investment side separate. We have to make the investment side separate because then the trading company is the trader platform is just a pure technology company. Yes, it's looking to find traders, and it will use that intelligence, that database for the investor site, and that's part of So it can use that information, but it itself does no allocation, does no investing. So all the registration, all the compliance occurs on the investor side. So they are separated, but it's the same. the
Concept.
the companies are connected in so far as the same ownership, and the idea is to use what we find on the trader side, to use it for the investor side. And we've got some partnerships now. We've focused the first few years as developing the trader side. Part of that was to make a platform that is has very good tools. You probably have this, even sites that you spend money for will probably not have tools as well as this. So traders can do stuff like, of course, they can generate their equity curves, their daily automatic, if they link their accounts to FundSeeder, their equity curve will update daily.
You have results.
You have you can generate stuff like underwater curve charts, volatility charts, so you're trading rolling indicators. You can, what does it look like? What does my rolling 12-month return look day by day by day? You can compare it to index. What does it look like compared to the CTA index, to the S&P index? We even have stuff on there like, what if I apply technical analysis to my equity curve?
Well, what's going to be?
Like if I want to do a crossover moving average of my equity curve, and I stop trading every time it crosses the downside and start trading an upside, would I be better off? Stuff like that. You can even those tools are on there. So there's a lot of stuff that's on, and all the statistics that you could think of. Like obviously Sharpe ratios, Optini ratios, all that stuff, and it's all there. It's all free. It's all easy to use. Why? Because originally, actually, we had a difference. My Emmanuel, whose idea it was, his idea, he really wanted to make it a subscription. I said, Emmanuel, you're crazy. I said, nowadays, nobody likes to pay anything on the web. It's too difficult. You can never make money. The way to do it is just use it to find traders. The money will be made by using those traders, finding investors to allocate, and then having a share of that. And of course, that's the way we've evolved. That's the concept. The concept is for traders who, actually, if they have a trading talent, they want to be discovered.
Here you go.
This is a great way of doing it, because we'll be searching that database, and we're just now beginning. I mentioned I was in Kyiv just a month ago, because our technology team is in Kyiv. Actually, not just in Kyiv, actually throughout the Ukraine. We've got. I said in Kyiv. Actually, I was twice. The last time I was in Odessa. That's
where I'm from.
Yeah. So the last time I'm meeting with the team was in Odessa. Time before we went out, we was in Kyiv. So we've got our technology team in the Ukraine. So where was I going with this? I got off on a tangent about going to the Ukraine. So the reason we were out there the last time is because now we're ready to develop the investor site. So I spent time designing what the investor site should be, and sort of I basically come up with that's my end of the founding three partners. I'm the analytical guy, the trading guy, the guy knows. So I kind of designed. I've been both an allocator and a trader, so I know both sides. So what I did as a trader on a trading platform, I designed it as a trader. What would I like to see? How would I like it to look? And now from an allocator, what would I like the site to look? So what would be the tools and so forth. So that's what was out there, and we've begun that project. So I think probably within 4 or 5 months we'll have the investor platform up. And we've now just recently we did very little outside money raising. We brought in some key partners, and one of our partners, I guess it's probably okay to mention, like for example, one of our partners is a Hong Kong asset management company.
Of course, they have money. They want to finance.
Called OPIM, and so they not only invested in us, but they'll probably be using, they'll be using managers out there. So that'll start happening. So that as the investment side gets developed over the next 5-6 months. So I'd say in the next, in the 6-12 month out period, we'll begin we've had some minor allocations, but the allocations from the investor side, not from the site that the traders would have, but the sister site, that and that company will start allocating in some substantial ways over the next few years. So if people are looking to be discovered, it's a great place to go.
Do you have any hobbies?
My hobbies are all physical. So my hobbies are
exercise,
hiking, cross-country skiing, kayaking, which is the one thing I can do here, but not very much. And so this is I used to live in locations where kayaking was my favorite. You know, I was able to do that all the time. So, but all my hobbies are physical sports, you know, and nothing like golf or anything slow. You know, things. Well, I mean, no, I guess walking is slow.
Active exercise.
But something, yeah. I mean, yeah, I got physical movement. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
I mean, as well as we know, we read the books, we see the people, and we see where the bullshit makes a lot of money. I mean, obviously, everybody wants to be a trader or somehow things of that nature. Just your advice to the beginners.
The beginners, well, if money is your motivation for becoming a trader, I'd say the odds are better than 50-50 you won't succeed. I think it's the wrong motivation. People who are successful in trading are the ones who are driven by passion for it. It's not that they're thinking of making a lot of money. In fact, traders range all over. Some traders do spend a lot of money. Okay, I mean, certainly not implying that a lot of these successful traders live like hermits. But I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed traders, and I'm not even going to mention any names here. But I'll give you an example here, just off the top of my head. But there's a manager I interviewed, and I don't know how many. I don't know if he's worth billions or he's worth hundreds of millions, but managing billions very successfully a long time. So, I mean, he's worth, if he's not worth more than $1 billion, he's probably not, I don't know, worth that much, not that far off. Or, so again, I don't want to kind of expose his private life or whatever. Not important who it is. But again, going back to the traders I interviewed, the ones that I don't remember anybody who got into it for the money. And maybe if they did, they wouldn't have said so. I don't know, but just nobody struck me as being the type that got into it just to make the money.
Just enjoy it.
I mean, certainly not in the beginning. Later on, maybe they became big. Spent a lot of money, but they didn't start out. That wasn't their initial motivation. But for most cases, they're more like somebody like a Bruce Kovner, I think, got into it just looking at it in his words, I think he used the analogy of a three-dimensional chess game. So, a three-dimensional chess game, and he's going to figure out how to win.
Bitcoin.
Huh? Bitcoin, I have no real opinion. I mean, Bitcoin, I first of all, I should preface anything I say about Bitcoin saying I probably know less about Bitcoin than anybody who cares about it. Certainly less than anybody who cares about it. To me, I can't get my head around about money that's created and by on the private side, and it's actually a small market in terms of all. To me, it looks like an ongoing bubble, but that's all I know. I mean, that's
nobody knows.
But I certainly wouldn't be surprised if 5 years from now it's gone to nothing. I certainly wouldn't be surprised. But I don't think I would have expected it to go where it's going now. But we did go through something, like the internet bubble. We had all these companies. Well, how could a stock go from $10 to 200 when the company's constantly losing money,
right,
burning money? Well, the answer is it can go there, but it can't stay there.
Then a question about Tesla.
Tesla's different. Well, Tesla's losing. Well, they're losing. Well, so is Amazon. But
Amazon actually makes money.
But no, yeah. But I'm saying Amazon. Yeah, look at the earnings of Amazon. You could never justify.
Right.
The most spectacular growing stocks. It's because the vision and the expansion and just build.
So you say just Tesla.
But Tesla,
people just like it.
Well, no, Tesla. You don't know. There's first of all, this is not my area, but just generally speaking, what's holding back electric cars from developing? It's mainly still the reservation. Yeah, okay, now I get a 300-mile range. But what if I want to go on and I don't want to worry about getting a recharge? This is the concern, all that. One of the areas where I know there's a lot of scientific research, and where eventually there will be some big breakthroughs, is on storage capacity. And so if that problem gets solved, if there's some major innovations there where the range becomes much more extreme, then electric cars can become much more dominant. Also, also, it hasn't happened yet, but from an economic standpoint, you got two things going on. You got the science of global warming on one side, and then you get economics, okay? And so, people are going to, people on the opposite side of politics, the other thing is global warming has gotten to be politicized, which is kind of crazy because it's just a question of science and it's a question of statistics. And you don't actually have to the argument for global warming doesn't even have to say that it's probable. In fact, that's what's ridiculous about it. Nobody has to claim that it's probable that we're going to have a disastrous outcome, but what is almost undeniable is that there's a meaningful statistical chance. Now, the science is actually saying it's maybe better than 50-50, which is frightening. But even if it was 5% or 10%, if I give you a gun with 10 chambers in it and tell you there's a bullet in one, and I'll give you $500,000 for pressing it once, you'd be crazy to take that bet.
Of course.
Yeah, you got a 90% chance you'll win, but that 10th shot, you want to bet your life on that, right? So let me see here. On one hand, we do nothing, and there's only a 10% chance that all the major cities on the globe are going to flood. When the ice sheets go, and our grandkids and grandkids will be, and the weather will be horrendous. You'll have so many, and you, by the way, trillions of dollars. The loss will be. So what if only you got to do mathematical expectations? If you got 10% of an extraordinary catastrophe, that's got big weight. 10% of it. So the whole argument, the problem, it misses the whole point. People who argue against doing anything about global warming are ignorant of tail risk. It's that simple. Okay, so that's one aspect. So you don't have to argue. The science certainly leans towards that direction. But even if you're going to say, okay, 90, 95, 97% of the climatologists are wrong, right? It does make a difference. But the other point of this is, and it comes to the question you asked about Tesla. So there's economics to it. So the irony is that people who argue for free markets don't understand economics, because free markets never say that free markets only work on the assumption that all the operators in the free market are not causing damage or not what we economists call externalities. So so if I'm a coal plant and I dump my sludge in the river where you get your water, I'm paying zero for that, but your cost isn't zero. Right. You might die a lot earlier, you're going to have health costs, and of course you means everybody else downriver. So what's happening is, when there's externalities, when one economic party, and this is not a matter of liberal or I would argue that 99% of economists will agree with me, whoever the liberal or conservative, when you have externalities, for the market to function properly, you need to put a price on those externalities. And so this is originally, by the way, a conservative economic idea. It's a market solution. And this is basically the way I think it should be done. The best from an economic standpoint and a free market economy, functioning economy perspective, the best solution is, if there's damage being done, you've got to price that damage. And so that's the obvious answer. And if things keep on getting worse, at some point, maybe people will do what almost every economist would say should be done. And when I lived in Washington State, Seattle, there was actually an initiative on the ballot for a market-based, and the idea is you tax carbon for the cost, for the damage it does, and then you give the money back.
Yeah, but then
you give them back about So it's not a tax. What you're doing is you're attaching the cost that the market can't attach the cost, right? So you need to attach. It's an externality. The market. So if you attach that cost, and then the money you collect, you give back by lowering people's income taxes. So you basically, what you're doing is, in that type of case, and this is why economists love this idea, is you're putting a price on something that causes damage. You're getting less of what you don't want, and you're reducing the price of earning money, right? Income, what you want more of. So from an economist, I think conservative. Sure, you'll find some conservative economists maybe you don't like the idea, but you'll have, I would say, vast majority of economists would go with this idea. So that's the there is a solution. Economists are not great at predicting, but economists are really very, very good on telling you what is the right policy to achieve, because they understand incentives, they understand externalities. So there is a solution to this. There is a solution. It's a market-based solution. Now, at some point, it's possible as things get worse that people may actually do the right thing.
Right.
They might actually put a price, and it doesn't have to be a tax. Like I say, they can do it as a revenue-neutral carbon tax, which was what we had the ballot initiative that lost in Washington. And it lost, by the way, ironically, the left opposed it more because the left wanted to use the money collected and use it to give subsidies to, they wanted to spend it, right? So they were against it, but it's quite, and the right was against it. So the middle, there wasn't enough of the middle to make the right and the left against it. The initiative didn't work. But eventually, it's the right solution, there's no question about it. So eventually that might get done. That goes back to your Tesla thing. So let's say now a price gets on carbon. Now gasoline costs what it should cost because of the damage being done or whatever.
Of course.
So then the electric cars become much cheaper and then it becomes more competitive, especially if you get the storage capacity issue. So it is quite possible that in the future, the combination of technology and economics, if it happens that way, and I'm not betting on that because the current politics in the US are very much against it, but it could happen because it is the right answer. So sometimes the right answer takes a long time.
Great, Jacob. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Wonderful. I hope just one thing that's, you were not bored with my questions.
No.
But I really enjoyed it. I asked all the questions.
No, you went in a completely different direction, and I talked about things that I normally don't talk about, so it's fine.
It's fantastic. I love it. Thank you very much. What else? I mean, hopefully if everything is fine, we'll take a next interview next year.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
Well,